Don has asked me to talk about my 1953 Vincent Rapide. This is a C version, C model. There was a Series A, there was a Series B. Series B is post-war. Series A is pre-war. Series C is from about 48, 49 to about 54. Series D is about 54, 55. Maybe a couple made in 56. So this is a Series C. It was made in January 1953. I have the build sheet for it. The Vincent Owners Club is really remarkable in that they have all the factory records, and the factory records are astonishingly complete. So all of the details, who did the factory, because every Vincent had a test rider. Variations from standard from the factory are noted. So I know that this is a numbers matching as it left the factory, Series C, January 1953 Rapide. The Rapide varies from the Black Shadow in that it has smaller carburetors, 1 1/16 as opposed to 1 1/8. The cams are not as high a lift, and it's not quite as blueprinted from the factory, if you will, if you kind of get that. The compression ratio in North America was the same on both bikes. In North America, the bikes, Vincent's, were 7.3 to 1. In England, the bikes were 6.9 or 6.7 to 1 because the petrol wasn't as good. They put compression plates under the barrels on both Rapides and Shadows. This bike is as original as you can have it. It's got an Alton, which is a 150 watt alternator instead of the Miller 50 watt generator, which was pretty feeble. And some of the things on the inside, the pistons, the valve seals, the idler in the timing case have been upgraded. The clutch has been upgraded to a one-piece lightning style clutch. How did I get the bike? Well, this bike was bought new by my dad. My dad had raced at Brands Hatch in England after the war. He was fastest man of the year 2 years in a row, 1947 and 1948. Fastest man of his motorcycle club. In other words, not fastest man at Brands Hatch, but of all the people from his motorcycle club that raced at Brands Hatch, he was fastest man of the year 2 years in a row. So he bought the Vincent. I'm not quite sure how. I never got to ask him that. But anyhow, the Vincent was his. And so my earliest memories are learning how to broadslide because my father raced grass track. He went round on a gravel road, he went round the corner with the bike full sideways steering with the throttle. And I learned that on the back of this Vincent. And when I got home, I told my mother about it. And she said, Robert, outside. And she spoke with my father about that. At any rate, when my father died, there was some discussion between my sisters and I, because this is obviously part of the estate, and we reached an agreement. And the bike, which was then in a whole bunch of boxes, because my father had been in the middle of doing a restoration, paint and plating. The CAD plating had all evaporated, so it needed to be redone. My dad did the CAD plating in the bathtub, which completely destroyed the bathtub. And he did the stove enameled, which made the house stink of stove enameled for months while he dried it all out, cured it in the oven. So the bike came back to Ontario. I flew to Nova Scotia, picked up the bike, brought it back, and I made a deal with Mike White. Now, Mike at the time was probably one of the premier Vincent restoration people in North America, in the world maybe. So I traded him a spare C Shadow engine that I had, that had had the transmission cut off, So that was a shadow engine, just the engine part, engine barrels, heads. I traded him that, and he reassembled my bike for me, and I paid for the parts, and he took a winter to do that. So I've had this bike since about 85, 86, about 86. When I got it, it had about 19,000 miles on it. And 1 year after I moved to Winnipeg, 1 year coming home from, I'd gone to Bigger, to the British Bike Rally there. I rolled over 21,000 miles, 21 I think. Anyhow, I pulled over on the side of the road, put the bike on its center stand outside of Brandon someplace, and thought about my old man. Because at that point in time, I mean, he'd been dead for a few years, and it just seemed like something that I should stop on the side of the road and think about my old man. And so now I've had this bike for a while, since the mid-80s. For the last 2 years, it's been apart. The bike had a problem. It wouldn't accelerate over 90 mile an hour, which I just couldn't live with. So I took the heads off, and we found on the front of both cylinders, we found a little staining where there's been some blow-by on the front of both cylinders between the head and the barrel joint. There's no head gasket on a Vincent. It relies on the liner, which is cast iron, being clamped between the head and the aluminum barrel. And so obviously the clamping force was inadequate. What was happening was that the head and the barrel were touching, so there wasn't enough clamping force. So I sent the heads off to a friend of mine in Langley who owns 6 Vincents, and we did lots of measurements, and he put the heads in his lathe, very carefully squared up, and he took just a tiny bit off the mating faces of the heads. He also had a look at the guides and the seats. He said the seats still had the original machining marks, which is pretty nice. And we fitted new valve guide seals. There's a new and improved valve guide seal. The original Vincent not only did not have an oil control ring, but it didn't have seals on the valve guides. So he fixed that. So now it's back together, but I'm still not happy with it. The suspension is too stiff. I'm afraid I'm too old now, and I'm not used to a bike with stiff suspension, and I've been spoiled by my Yamaha. At it. I mean, I guess there's 3 realities. There's the beauty of the bike and looking at it as an object d'art. There's the beauty of the bike as an investment. That much is obvious. But for me, it's not about money. I really don't care about that. And yeah, it's nice. But the beauty for me is winding it up in 3rd gear and seeing the speedometer go tick, tick, 105. I've seen 105 miles an hour in 3rd on this bike, and it makes a mighty wonderful roar. So while I don't advocate for constant abuse of my motorcycle, it has to work properly. If it doesn't work properly, then I've got to fix it. And if I can't fix it, and the problem is, for me, I hate working on bikes. I really do. I love riding them, but I hate fixing them. So that's why it's going to Minneapolis, and he'll fix what I can't, what I've just, enough. I'm done.
So has it still got the original paint that your dad did?
No, I had Jerry, what was his name?
Stubbington.
I had Jerry Stubbington do the fenders and the fender stays and the tank. And Jerry did a pretty nice job.
The paint is really nice on it.
He painted the tank, and we had it for a little while, but then the paint around the gas filler lifted. Mm-hmm. So I took it back to him and said, what's causing this? So Jerry took it back and repainted it. And when he redid that, because I think he felt bad, although he really didn't have to, he did the gold pinstriping as well as a bonus. And I miss Jerry. I see him every once in a while. I see him at Bigger. He's a very nice man, and I understand why he moved to Alberta,
But it was too bad when he moved.
Yeah, it was.
We lost a good guy.
We lost a nice man, a
Yeah.
good friend, and a hell of a good painter.
Yeah, I've known Jerry for like 40 years.
Yeah, so Jerry did the paint. So I don't think some of the paint is obviously the same paint that my dad did, but most of it's, this would not have been as shiny. Stoved enamel is not as shiny as a modern 2-part paint. This is base coat, clear coat. So
Right.
it's shinier than what Vincent would have done with the with the technology.
So the stove enamel was the stock
Yes.
format for Vincent putting their paint on.
Yes. And
Interesting.
that was pretty common for motorcycles and many things in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, no, they're just a beautiful motorcycle. I've always liked the look of them. I've always thought the innovation behind them, like they were well ahead of their time on a lot of things.
Oh, it's a cool bike. I mean, no frame.
Mm-hmm.
Harley can make all the noise it wants about Softail, but Vincent designed that in 1927. And my good friend Parker Fillmore, may he rest in peace, he's one of the few people that I have invited to ride my Vincent. Now, Parker had a knucklehead, so he was used to riding, knucklehead's no slouch. But Parker said to me he was blown away by how fast it was and how smooth it was. It's at 80 miles an hour, there's virtually no engine vibration. And this bike is far from perfect, but at 80, it's very smooth. And it'll cruise. Well, I've ridden to Bigger. I've ridden down to Interlochen, Michigan. 2 good 10-hour days. It'll cruise all day at 65 miles an hour. It just bumps along. And I mean, the only problem for it now is that I'm 68, so I can't ride long days like that. Even on my Yamaha, I can't ride long days like that. 750 kilometers is about my limit. But on the Vincent, when I was younger, 30 years ago, so when I was younger, we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, the motor and transmission, I mean, it just idles. At 65, you're really just a fast idle, and it's perfectly stress-free.
Yeah. Beautiful bike again. Thank you very much for doing this, Bob.
Well, thanks for coming out, Don. You're the second person. Greg Berg did a really nice video. Greg Berg's a friend of mine, and I'm pleased to say that. And I am pleased to do what I can, because we need to encourage people to buy and love and ride old bikes and get into the hobby. And so anything, some small thing that I can do, and this is 2 minutes of my time, if someone sees it and goes, hey, that's pretty cool, I should buy, I should get rid of my GSXR 600 or GSXR 750 or whatever, and I should buy myself a Velo set because they look cool. If I can make a tiny bit of difference one day to somebody that they go, hey, that's pretty neat. Maybe it's as small as paying more attention to motorcycles on the road. Maybe it's something where they support a politician who is pro-motorcycle. Anything. We're all just grains of sand here affecting, how the world works. So yeah, nice. You're a good guy. I like you. You're good friends. Nice to have you come out on this. I'm rubbing my hands. God damn, it's
a little cold.
Yeah, a little cold. But there it is. And I'm sorry we didn't get to this earlier in the summer. We're both busy. So there we go.
Yeah, no, thank you again. Great bike. I love looking at it.
Well, anytime.
Thanks.